The airport was bustling with the usual rush of travelers, rolling suitcases and the constant hum of announcements over the loudspeakers. People hurried to make their flights, some talking on phones, others glancing nervously at the time. Among them, a black woman moved through the crowd with a sense of calm determination. She carried herself with confidence, her luggage rolling smoothly behind her and her documents neatly organized in a folder. She had traveled many times before and was experienced in navigating airport procedures, but nothing could prepare her for what was about to happen. As she approached the immigration checkpoint, she noticed the long line of travelers waiting to be processed. Officers scanned documents and asked questions, some polite, some abrupt, depending on the traveler. When it was her turn, two officers called her forward. They examined her passport with an unusual intensity, flipping pages and looking at her with a level of scrutiny that felt unnecessary. She answered their questions calmly and politely, stating her purpose of travel, her destination, and her return plans. She had nothing to hide and expected a routine process, but the officers seemed skeptical. The woman noticed the subtle tension building. One of the officers asked her to remove her coat and open her bag. She complied without hesitation, making sure to keep her mot. The woman stood firmly at the checkpoint, her hands folded lightly in front of her, keeping her posture straight and calm. The officers, still scrutinizing her passport, looked increasingly uneasy. One of them muttered under his breath about a supposed discrepancy, while the other glanced nervously at the shredder-like device he had already prepared. The woman's pulse remained steady, though inside she felt the tension pressing down. She had anticipated challenges in her travel, but this level of suspicion was unusual and unsettling. Despite that, she kept her voice clear and polite, asking the officer to explain why her documents were being questioned so thoroughly. The officer who had spoken first, his tone harsh and authoritative, insisted that they were following protocol. He claimed that her passport had been flagged in the system and that they were required to destroy it. The woman took a deep breath and asked for clarification, her voice firm but controlled. She explained that she had verified all her documents before leaving and that they were completely valid. Her calm assertiveness created a noticeable pause as the officer seemed to consider her words. A crowd had begun to gather quietly, sensing the unusual nature of the confrontation, but she remained focused on addressing the officers directly, aware that her composure was her strongest ally. She reached gently into her bag to retrieve supporting documents, including confirmation of her travel arrangements and any additional identification she could offer. She handed them to the officer, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. The officer's eyes flicked over the papers quickly, but he remained skeptical. He shook his head, muttering about rules and regulations that seemed overly rigid. The woman calmly pointed out the validity of each document, her explanations clear and logical, emphasizing that destroying her passport would be both unnecessary and improper. Her demeanor began to unsettle the officers. They were used to travelers responding with nervousness or compliance, not reasoned explanations delivered with confidence. The woman did not yell or make accusations. She simply stated facts and requested proper procedure. Bystanders, some recording discreetly, whispered to each other, noting her poise in what could have been a very intimidating situation. The woman kept her focus entirely on the interaction, understanding that a single misstep could escalate the tension quickly. The first officer gestured impatiently toward the shredding device. The woman's eyes widened slightly and she quickly but calmly stepped forward, asking once again what they intended to do and reminding them that her passport was a valid legal document. Her voice carried authority without aggression, forcing the officers to pause. The surrounding passengers leaned slightly forward, sensing that this was no ordinary dispute. The woman's composure became a silent form of power, demonstrating that she was fully aware of her rights and willing to assert them without escalating the conflict. The officers exchanged glances, their earlier certainty beginning to falter. The second officer, who had been quieter up to this point, looked around, perhaps realizing the growing attention from the crowd. He hesitated, mumbling something about the rules, but his tone lacked conviction. The woman seized the moment to reiterate that destroying her passport was unacceptable, and that they should immediately contact a supervisor for guidance. She spoke clearly, ensuring her request was heard not only by the officers but by the witnesses who now watched closely. The crowd's reaction was subtle, but noticeable. Some passengers whispered questions to each other, while others recorded video on their phones. The woman, fully aware of the bystanders, continued her calm, measured responses. She did not address the crowd directly, but her steady presence served as a quiet reminder to the officers that they were being observed. Her clarity and composure began to change the dynamic. The officer's previous confidence was replaced with unease and hesitation. One of the officers muttered about following standard procedure, but he was clearly unsure how to proceed, given the woman's assertiveness and the growing public attention. The woman calmly explained her understanding of the process, stating that all her travel documents were legitimate and that there was no legal basis for destroying her passport. She emphasized that any actions taken without proper justification could have serious consequences, speaking in a tone that combined knowledge with authority. The woman's confidence forced the officers to reconsider. They began asking more questions, attempting to probe for inconsistencies or excuses to justify their actions. She answered each question methodically, carefully choosing her words to remain factual, non-confrontational, and assertive. Her ability to respond intelligently to every query highlighted the officers' lack of basis for their initial decision. The bystanders, witnessing the exchange, became increasingly aware of the unfair treatment she had received and of her composed handling of the situation. The officer's unease grew as she continued to assert her position. The first officer glanced nervously at the shredding device, now uncertain if he should proceed. The woman, sensing his hesitation, calmly asked for the name and rank of the supervising officer who could review the case. Her request was firm but polite, leaving no room for ambiguity. She made it clear that she expected proper protocol to be followed, and her calm persistence began to visibly affect the officer's confidence. A supervisor was eventually called over. The woman greeted the supervisor with a polite nod, clearly stating her case and explaining the events leading up to the confrontation. She emphasized the validity of her documents and highlighted the inappropriate behavior of the initial officers. Her composure and clarity left the supervisor attentive and professional, quickly taking control of the situation. The initial officers, now visibly uncomfortable, stepped back slightly as the supervisor began to review the situation. The woman remained focused, ensuring that the attention stayed on the facts and not on any emotional reaction. She knew that any display of anger or frustration could undermine her position, so she maintained a calm, steady demeanor. The supervisor asked questions, listened carefully, and reviewed the documents, all while the woman continued to provide concise and factual answers. The crowd, now fully observing the interaction, remained quiet but attentive, recognizing the growing tension and the woman's professionalism. As the supervisor reviewed the documents, the woman subtly emphasized her identity and her knowledge of proper procedures. She explained that she had followed all rules and had valid documentation for her travel. The officers who had initially challenged her passport appeared increasingly anxious, realizing that their actions could have serious consequences. The woman did not gloat or show satisfaction. She remained professional, allowing the facts and her composure to speak for themselves. The supervisor, clearly recognizing the mistake, began issuing instructions to correct the situation. Even after the supervisor stepped in, the tension did not fully disappear. The woman had successfully stopped the immediate threat to her passport, but the initial officers were visibly uneasy, their faces betraying confusion and concern. They had underestimated her calm authority and now realized that the situation was more serious than they had anticipated. The woman stood firm, maintaining eye contact with the supervisor and the officers, her voice steady and polite as she explained the events once again. She made sure every point was clear. Her documents were valid, the actions taken against her were unnecessary, and she expected accountability for what had occurred. As the supervisor reviewed the documents and the officer's actions, another staff member approached, whispering something urgently. The woman followed the exchange with quiet attention. Her patience was deliberate. She knew that rushing or showing frustration could undermine her position. Moments later, it became clear why the whispers were urgent. Someone had discovered a crucial detail. She was married to a high-ranking government official, the Attorney General. The news seemed to ripple through the area, causing subtle shifts in the expressions of those nearby.
See?
The initial officer's previous confidence vanished, replaced by sudden anxiety and panic. The realization hit the officers almost instantly. Their earlier certainty in handling what they assumed was a routine procedure had dissolved. The consequences of their actions were now very real. Destroying the passport of a civilian is a serious matter, but doing so to the spouse of the Attorney General elevated the incident to a level none of them had anticipated. They glanced at each other, unsure how to respond. Their previous authority undermined by their error and the woman's unwavering composure. The woman, aware of the revelation, did not react with triumph or anger. Instead, she continued to maintain her calm, professional demeanor. Her tone remained measured as she emphasized the importance of proper procedure, respect, and accountability. She understood that this was not just about her passport anymore. It was about ensuring that the officers recognized their mistake and that the situation was resolved correctly. Her composed presence communicated authority far beyond the immediate dispute. The supervisor, now fully aware of the gravity of the incident, addressed the initial officers firmly. He reminded them of the proper protocols, the importance of following the law, and the consequences of failing to respect a citizen's rights. The officers, now visibly sweating and tense, nodded quickly, attempting to regain composure but unable to hide their concern. The woman's calm, deliberate explanations had set the tone for the entire interaction, making it clear that she was not intimidated and that the error could have significant repercussions. The crowd, having watched the unfolding events, was silent but attentive. Bystanders noticed the sudden shift in dynamics. The officers who had seemed authoritative just moments ago were now hesitant and uncertain. The woman's clarity and self-assurance had turned the situation around completely. People whispered among themselves, expressing admiration for her courage and intelligence. Noting how she had remained composed in the face of aggression and potential humiliation, the woman continued to engage with the supervisor, ensuring that her documentation was fully validated and that proper procedures were followed to correct any mistakes made by the initial officers. She provided clear, concise explanations, leaving no room for confusion. Her presence alone seemed to hold the officers in check, preventing any further overreach or misconduct. The supervisor, recognizing her professionalism, listened carefully and ensured that all steps were taken to rectify the situation without creating additional conflict. Despite the high tension, the woman's behavior remained steady. She did not raise her voice or display anger, but her calm authority communicated far more power than aggression could. The initial officers shifted uncomfortably, aware of the implications of their actions and the fact that they were now under scrutiny. The woman's approach had transformed what could have been a humiliating and chaotic confrontation into an example of professionalism, self-assurance, and accountability. As the verification process continued, the woman subtly reinforced the importance of understanding procedures and respecting the rights of travelers. She explained that travel documents must be handled with care, and that any errors or assumptions could have serious consequences. Her voice was clear and firm, guiding the officers to recognize the seriousness of their actions without creating further tension. The supervisor nodded in agreement, taking steps to ensure the incident was documented and that corrective measures were in place. The initial officers, still visibly shaken, attempted to regain some sense of control but remained cautious. The revelation about the woman's connection to the Attorney General had fundamentally shifted the power dynamic. They were no longer in a position to dictate the course of action. They were being guided by her calm authority and the supervision of a higher-ranking official. The woman's composure, clear communication, and understanding of the situation allowed her to maintain control and ensure that proper procedures were followed. The crowd observed the evolving scene with fascination. Passengers whispered to each other about the sudden change in the officer's demeanor, the woman's remarkable poise, and the seriousness of the situation. Some recorded discreetly, recognizing that they were witnessing an extraordinary display of calm authority in the face of intimidation. The woman did not react to the attention. She remained focused on her goal, ensuring her passport was validated and her rights were respected. The supervisor instructed the initial officers to step aside, and after the initial confrontation and the revelation of her identity, the atmosphere at the checkpoint shifted dramatically. The officers who had been aggressive moments before now seemed unsure of themselves. The woman stood calmly, her posture composed, her eyes steady, and her voice clear. She knew that the situation had escalated beyond routine procedure, and that any further interaction would require careful handling. She continued to speak politely yet firmly, ensuring that her words carried authority without aggression. The supervisor who had stepped in earlier took charge of the situation, giving instructions to the initial officers to step back and leave the handling of the documents to him. The woman presented her passport and supporting documents once again, allowing the supervisor to verify everything. She remained attentive, answering any questions with precision and clarity. Every response she gave emphasized her professionalism, her knowledge of the procedures, and her commitment to following the law. The crowd of travelers nearby watched quietly, sensing the tension and the shift in authority. The officers who had first scrutinized her passport glanced nervously at each other. They were no longer in control, and they knew it. Their previous certainty had been replaced by apprehension, and they struggled to find a way to regain credibility. The woman's calm demeanor and articulate explanations left little room for argument. She had taken control of the situation through composure and knowledge, and the officers' realization of their mistake added to their unease. The woman continued to cooperate fully with the supervisor, presenting all necessary documents and responding to questions with clarity. She remained patient and professional, understanding that rushing or displaying frustration could compromise her position. Her calm authority highlighted the stark contrast between her conduct and the officer's earlier aggression. Observers could see that she was not just a traveler defending her rights. She was an individual who understood the gravity of the situation and handled it with intelligence and dignity. The supervisor, now fully aware of the woman's identity and the seriousness of the initial officer's actions, addressed the situation firmly. He reminded everyone that proper procedure must be followed and that no traveler's rights should be violated. The woman listened attentively, acknowledging the supervisor's guidance and ensuring that her documents were fully verified. She remained poised, her focus on resolution rather than confrontation. Her professionalism influenced the entire scene, turning a potential escalation into an orderly and controlled process. The initial officers, still visibly shaken, were directed to step aside completely. The woman continued to provide the supervisor with any information he needed to confirm her documentation. She remained composed, careful to maintain eye contact and measured gestures, demonstrating confidence without confrontation. Her presence commanded respect, and the supervisor appreciated her clear, calm communication and attention to detail. The officers, now removed from the immediate process, observed quietly, understanding that their earlier actions had been both inappropriate and unnecessary. Bystanders who had been watching the situation unfold began to murmur quietly among themselves. Many were impressed by the woman's ability to remain calm under pressure. They recognized the courage it took to handle such a situation with dignity and intelligence. Some discreetly recorded parts of the interaction, while others simply observed, appreciating the contrast between her composed authority and the initial officer's panic. The woman, focused entirely on the supervisor and the process, remained unaffected by the attention. She understood that the situation required careful navigation, and that her calm approach was the most powerful tool she had. The supervisor methodically verified all her documents, taking care to ensure that any errors caused by the initial officers were corrected. The woman responded to each inquiry with precise and professional answers, never raising her voice or displaying frustration. Her calmness allowed the supervisor to work efficiently, and the situation gradually moved toward resolution. The officers who had initially confronted her stood nearby, silent and reflective, realizing the seriousness of their misjudgment. Their earlier confidence had been replaced by humility and awareness of the consequences. As the verification process continued, the woman emphasized the importance of adhering to proper procedure and respecting travelers' rights. She spoke clearly and calmly, providing explanations that were both factual and authoritative. The supervisor took note of her professionalism, recognizing the difference between someone asserting their rights through intelligence and composure versus confrontation. The woman's approach not only ensured her safety and the validation of her documents, but also reinforced the need for accountability in the officer's conduct. The situation remained tense but controlled. The woman's calm presence prevented any further escalation, and the supervisor guided the officers through the proper protocol to address the earlier mistake. The woman followed each instruction carefully, ensuring that the documentation and verification process was thorough and accurate. Her professional handling of the situation left no doubt that she was fully aware of her rights and the proper procedures, and her composure ensured that the encounter remained dignified and orderly. The initial officers, now fully under supervision, were instructed to review the steps they had taken and provide a written account of their actions. They complied, their body language revealing discomfort and recognition of the gravity of their mistake. The woman remained patient and professional, offering no unnecessary criticism but allowing the facts to speak for themselves. Her ability to handle a high-pressure situation without aggression or panic served as a powerful example for everyone present. Throughout the process, the woman's calm authority influenced the atmosphere at the checkpoint. Other travelers and staff observed the interaction, noting the stark contrast between her composure and the initial officer's earlier behavior. Her clarity, confidence, and attention to detail highlighted the importance of knowledge and professionalism in resolving tense situations. The supervisor, acknowledging her effective handling of the situation, ensured that the necessary steps were taken to correct the earlier misconduct and prevent similar incidents in the future. Once the verification was complete and the necessary documentation corrected, the woman remained vigilant, ensuring that her passport and supporting papers were secure. She maintained a professional distance from the initial officers, observing their actions while remaining focused on her own responsibilities. Her awareness of the situation allowed her to navigate the final stages of the encounter with intelligence and composure, preventing any further complications or misunderstandings. After the tense moments at the checkpoint, the woman finally felt a sense of relief, but she remained alert. She knew that the situation, though technically resolved, had lasting consequences. The initial officers had been reprimanded and placed under supervision, but the memory of their panic and the mishandling of her passport lingered in the air. She collected her documents carefully, making sure everything was in order and that there were no lingering errors from the earlier confusion. Her composure had guided her through a highly stressful experience, and she was determined to see it through to its proper conclusion. As she moved through the airport, she reflected on the incident. The initial scrutiny, the destruction of her passport, and the officer's panic after learning her identity had been intense. Yet she had handled everything with calm authority and intelligence. She had remained polite and professional throughout, asserting her rights without aggression and ensuring that the situation was corrected properly. Her focus had always been on clarity and fairness, not on confrontation, and this approach had ultimately protected her. The crowd that had gathered earlier had dispersed, but some passengers who had witnessed the incident quietly shared their observations with airport staff. They spoke of her composure, her confidence, and the way she had handled an intimidating situation without escalating it. Many were impressed by her calmness and the clarity of her communication. Her actions demonstrated that even under pressure, one could maintain dignity, assert authority, and ensure that justice and proper procedure were upheld. The woman made her way to the waiting area, aware that her journey was far from over. She took a moment to breathe and gather her thoughts, reflecting on the lessons from the encounter. She understood that knowledge, preparation, and composure were her strongest tools in navigating unexpected challenges. She had faced intimidation, yet her calm presence had turned the situation around, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. Her experience highlighted the importance of remaining professional and measured, even when others acted impulsively or inappropriately. Airport staff approached her discreetly, expressing their apologies for the earlier mishandling and assuring her that the necessary reports had been filed. She acknowledged their words politely, emphasizing the importance of accountability and proper procedure. She maintained her calm demeanor, using the interaction to reinforce the message that respect and professionalism must guide all actions, particularly in high-pressure situations. Her clarity and composed manner ensured that the staff understood the gravity of the incident and the need for corrective action. As she waited for her flight, the woman noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere around her. Passengers who had seen the incident spoke quietly among themselves, recognizing the courage and intelligence she had displayed. Her calm authority had not only resolved the immediate conflict, but it also set an example for others about handling difficult encounters with poise and professionalism. Her actions demonstrated that maintaining composure and clarity can transform potentially dangerous or humiliating situations into opportunities to assert rights responsibly and intelligently. The woman reviewed her travel documents one final time, ensuring that everything was correct. She remained attentive, aware that even small errors could cause further complications. Her meticulousness reflected her professionalism and commitment to following proper procedures. The officers who had mishandled her passport were now under scrutiny, and she understood that accountability would be enforced. She had successfully navigated a high-stakes encounter without compromising her composure or her dignity. The supervisor who had assisted her earlier confirmed that the situation was fully resolved. He thanked her for her cooperation and for handling the incident with professionalism. She responded politely, acknowledging the guidance and support while remaining focused on her own responsibilities. The interaction underscored the importance of clear communication, calm authority, and adherence to proper procedure in resolving conflicts and preventing escalation. As boarding time approached, the woman prepared to continue her journey. She reflected on the strength it had taken to remain calm in the face of intimidation, and the importance of knowledge and preparation in navigating challenging situations. Her ability to assert her rights without aggression had protected her and ensured that proper procedures were followed. She understood that her actions had not only resolved the immediate conflict but had also served as a model for others on how to handle high-pressure encounters with dignity and professionalism. Passengers continued to move through the terminal, some glancing discreetly at her as they recalled the incident. The woman remained focused on her journey, her calm authority leaving a lasting impression on the environment. She understood that the way she conducted herself had set a standard for professionalism and composure, influencing both airport staff and bystanders. Her experience demonstrated the power of maintaining dignity, clear communication, and knowledge in resolving conflicts. As she approached the gate, she made sure her documents were secure and ready for inspection. Her attention to detail reflected her understanding of the importance of preparation and vigilance, even after a stressful incident. She remained composed, aware that her actions had already influenced the outcome of the situation, and set a clear example of how to handle unexpected challenges effectively. The officers who had mishandled her passport were now fully accountable, and she knew that the situation would be reported accurately, reinforcing the lessons of professionalism and respect for travelers' rights. The woman boarded her flight calmly, her experience at the airport serving as a reminder of the importance of composure, preparation, and assertiveness. She had faced a challenging situation, maintained her dignity, and ensured that proper procedures were followed. Her actions had left a lasting impression on the officers, the supervisor, the staff, and the passengers who had witnessed the incident. She had demonstrated that even in moments of tension and uncertainty, calm authority and clear communication could prevail. Once seated, she reflected on the lessons of the day. She understood that knowledge, patience, and composure are crucial when navigating unexpected challenges. Her ability to remain calm under pressure had protected her, ensured proper procedure, and highlighted the importance of professionalism. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had handled the situation with dignity and intelligence, leaving no doubt about her competence and resilience. The flight took off smoothly, and the woman continued her journey with confidence. She knew that the incident at the airport would remain a memorable example of how calm authority, clear communication, and professional behavior can turn a potentially negative situation into a display of competence and strength. Her experience underscored the importance of maintaining composure, asserting rights responsibly, and handling challenging encounters with dignity. Passengers on the flight were unaware of the full details of the incident, but the woman carried with her the knowledge of how she had managed a difficult and high-stakes situation. She had turned an intimidating confrontation into a demonstration of professionalism, authority, and calm intelligence. Her actions had ensured accountability, corrected errors, and left a lasting impression on everyone involved. She understood that her composure and clarity had been the key factors in navigating the entire situation successfully. As the plane ascended, the woman allowed herself a moment of reflection. She knew that her experience was a powerful reminder of the importance of preparation, patience, and clear communication. Her calm authority had not only protected her, but it also influenced the behavior of others. demonstrating that dignity and professionalism can prevail even in the most challenging circumstances. The incident would remain a testament to her ability to navigate high-pressure situations with intelligence, poise, and resilience. Her journey continued, and the woman carried with her the confidence that comes from having faced a significant challenge and handled it successfully. She had maintained her composure, asserted her rights responsibly, and ensured that proper procedures were followed. The lessons of the day would remain with her, reinforcing the power of calm authority, clear communication, and professional behavior in the face of unexpected difficulties. Her actions had not only resolved the immediate situation but had also set an example for others on how to navigate challenges with dignity and intelligence. By the time the woman settled into her seat and prepared for the journey ahead, she had fully processed the significance of the airport encounter. She had demonstrated that knowledge, preparation, and calm composure are invaluable tools in handling high-pressure situations. Her experience highlighted the importance of remaining professional, assertive, and clear in communication, leaving a lasting impact on everyone who witnessed her actions. The officer's panic and subsequent accountability reinforced the lessons of professionalism, respect, and the power of calm authority in even the most challenging circumstances. The crowd, witnessing the resolution, began to disperse, impressed by the woman's ability to handle a potentially intimidating situation with professionalism and calm authority. Her actions demonstrated that knowledge, preparation, and composure are critical in managing high-pressure encounters. The officers, now fully aware of their mistake and under supervision, complied with instructions and allowed the process to continue without interference. As the woman moved through the final stages of the checkpoint, she remained composed, ensuring that all documents were validated and her travel rights protected. Her focus on professionalism and clarity had not only safeguarded her, but also highlighted the importance of proper procedure, accountability, and respectful treatment of travelers. The supervisor, satisfied with the resolution, made sure that the incident was fully documented, including the officer's misconduct and the woman's effective handling of the situation. The initial officers, reflecting on the encounter, were visibly humbled. They had learned the impact of their actions and the importance of treating every traveler with respect and adherence to procedure. The woman's calm and professional response had transformed a potentially dangerous and humiliating situation into a demonstration of intelligence, authority, and dignity. Observers carried with them the memory of a woman who had faced intimidation with courage and composure, leaving a lasting impression on the airport staff and passengers alike. By the end of the encounter, the woman had successfully navigated the situation, ensuring her passport was validated and her rights fully respected. The initial officers remained under supervision, and corrective measures were in place to address their earlier actions. The crowd that had gathered quietly dispersed, recognizing the significance of what they had witnessed. The woman's calm, professional, and assertive approach had prevented escalation and demonstrated the power of composure and knowledge in handling high-pressure situations. Her experience at the checkpoint would remain a vivid example of professionalism and courage in the face of intimidation. She had turned a potentially humiliating confrontation into a controlled, respectful, and orderly resolution. Her calm authority, clear communication, and unwavering focus ensured that the situation was handled correctly, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. The incident underscored the importance of maintaining composure, asserting rights intelligently, and handling challenging encounters with dignity and professionalism. To allow the woman to complete the verification process, she complied, maintaining her calm and composed demeanor. She worked with the supervisor to confirm her documents, clarify the situation, and address any discrepancies caused by the initial officer's actions. Her focus on professionalism and clarity prevented further escalation and ensured that the incident would be properly documented. Once her passport was confirmed as valid, the woman took a moment to ensure all documentation was secure and that any errors were corrected. She remained attentive, aware that the initial officers were still nearby and that the situation could shift again if not handled carefully. Her vigilance demonstrated not only her intelligence, but also her awareness of the potential risks involved in such encounters. The supervisor acknowledged her efforts, noting the importance of her clear communication and calm presence in resolving the situation. The initial officers, now fully aware of the gravity of their actions, appeared humbled and tense, They had overstepped their authority and faced the reality of serious consequences. The woman's professionalism and calm authority had highlighted their mistakes and ensured accountability. They followed the supervisor's instructions, making no further attempts to challenge her or her documents. The crowd witnessing this resolution quietly dispersed, impressed by the woman's ability to maintain control and navigate a highly charged situation. Throughout the encounter, the woman demonstrated that knowledge, preparation, and composure were critical in managing high-pressure situations. She had turned an aggressive and potentially humiliating confrontation into a display of intelligence, professionalism, and authority. Her calm demeanor, measured voice, and confident posture ensured that her rights were protected and that the officers were held accountable for their actions. As the airport continued its busy flow, the woman completed her travel process. She moved through the checkpoint with poise, her documents validated and her rights respected. The initial officers remained behind, reflecting on the serious mistake they had made. The supervisor followed standard procedure to document the incident and ensure that corrective action would be taken. The woman's calm and professional handling of the situation had prevented further escalation and ensured that justice was observed. Passengers and staff who had witnessed the events discussed the encounter quietly. Many expressed admiration for the woman's ability to remain composed under pressure. They noted how she had navigated the tense situation with intelligence, patience, and clear communication. The story of the confrontation, though unfolding in a small part of the airport, became a remarkable example of professionalism and assertiveness in the face of intimidation. The woman, reflecting on the experience, remained focused on her travel plans. She understood the importance of maintaining calm and clarity, even when faced with unexpected challenges. Her assertiveness had protected her, ensured proper procedure, and highlighted the necessity of respecting the rights of all travelers. Her actions demonstrated that composure and professionalism are often more powerful than confrontation or aggression, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed the incident. The initial officers were told to step aside and stop any further action regarding the woman's passport. The woman continued to respond calmly, acknowledging the supervisor's directions and remaining cooperative while ensuring that her rights and documentation were respected. Her poise had turned a potentially humiliating or dangerous encounter into a controlled and orderly resolution. The crowd, witnessing the resolution, began to murmur softly, impressed by the woman's handling of the tense moment. Some whispered admiration for her ability to remain calm under pressure. Others noted the seriousness of the officer's mistake. The woman did not address the crowd, maintaining her focus on completing the process and ensuring her travel plans could proceed without further incident. Her ability to navigate the situation with intelligence and grace became evident to all who were watching. Even as the immediate confrontation eased, the woman remained vigilant. She carefully collected her documents and ensured that the supervisor had reviewed and verified her passport. She maintained a professional distance from the initial officers, refusing to engage unnecessarily while keeping her composure. Her awareness of the environment and the potential for further mistakes allowed her to remain in control, demonstrating not only courage but also strategic thinking. By the time she was allowed to continue, the woman had turned a highly stressful and potentially threatening situation into a demonstration of professionalism, assertiveness, and calm authority. She had stood her ground without aggression, asserted her rights, and ensured proper procedure was followed. The officers who had initially challenged her passport had learned the impact of underestimating someone who is both confident and knowledgeable. The bystanders, now dispersing, carried with them the memory of a woman who faced intimidation with courage and intelligence. The airport continued its usual activity, but the incident left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The woman had successfully navigated the first major challenge of her journey, setting the stage for what would come next in an already intense day. Her composure, clarity, and assertiveness had prevented escalation, maintained her dignity, and ensured that justice and proper procedure were upheld. As she moved through the checkpoint, she carried with her not only her documents but also the quiet satisfaction of having handled a difficult encounter with skill and confidence, vehemence clear and visible. She understood the importance of remaining calm in situations where she might be perceived as a threat for no reason. People in the line watched quietly, sensing that something was different this time. There was an awkward energy in the air, a mix of curiosity and unease. One of the officers, frowning, held up her passport and pointed to the pages as if something was wrong. She leaned slightly forward, asking politely what the issue was. The officer muttered something under his breath, then told her to step aside. Confused but composed, she moved to a separate counter area. The nearby travelers began whispering among themselves, some expressing concern, others simply observing the unusual interaction. The woman kept her hands visible and her posture relaxed, refusing to show fear, even as she felt the tension rising. The officers began inspecting her passport more closely, flipping through the pages and looking at visas. One of them asked her a series of questions, some redundant, some bordering on inappropriate. She answered each question clearly and politely, trying to understand what was causing the scrutiny. Her calmness contrasted sharply with the officer's growing frustration. She noticed the subtle signs of impatience in their body language, but she did not react with anger or panic. Instead, she remained steady, aware that any sudden movement could be misinterpreted. Meanwhile, the surrounding passengers watched quietly. Some discreetly recorded the interaction on their phones, sensing that this was not a typical situation. A few passengers whispered to each other, questioning why the officers were treating her differently. There was a collective feeling that the situation could escalate if not handled carefully. The woman noticed the observers but did not let them distract her. She focused on her goal, to complete her travel process safely and professionally. The tension rose when one of the officers claimed there was an irregularity in her passport. He spoke in a firm tone, insisting that her travel documents could not be accepted. She calmly asked for clarification, pointing out that all her documents were valid and in order. She remained polite but firm, making it clear that she was aware of her rights and the standard procedures for international travel. Her knowledge and composure began to draw subtle attention from bystanders, who watched as she navigated the situation with intelligence and poise. The officer did not provide a satisfactory explanation. Instead, he motioned for a small shredder-like device that was used to destroy invalid documents. The woman's eyes widened slightly in surprise, and she immediately intervened verbally, asking what he was doing and why he intended to destroy her passport. Her voice remained calm, but there was an edge of firmness that conveyed the seriousness of the situation. The officer hesitated for a moment, then proceeded, ignoring her protest. She continued to speak, questioning the legality and necessity of the action, making sure her words were measured, clear, and audible. The crowd around them grew more attentive. Some passengers shifted closer to observe, while others took a step back, concerned for her safety. She remained composed, her body language confident and her voice steady. She addressed the officers directly, explaining that destroying her passport was not only unjustified but also a serious violation of procedure. Her calm assertiveness forced the officers to pause, their previous certainty replaced by hesitation. They had expected compliance or fear, but instead, they encountered determination and clarity. She asked to speak to a supervisor, knowing that escalating the situation through proper channels could prevent further misconduct. One officer muttered something about procedure, while the other looked unsure. The woman maintained her calm demeanor, ensuring that she did not provoke them, but also making it clear that she would not allow her rights or property to be violated. Her professional and composed approach started to shift the dynamic, creating a subtle but significant imbalance in authority. As the confrontation continued, the woman noticed airport staff observing quietly, unsure of whether to intervene. Some passengers whispered among themselves about the apparent overreaction of the officers. The situation had drawn attention, and the woman's calm handling of it became increasingly evident. She continued to speak with clarity, explaining her identity, her valid travel documents, and her rights under the law. Her calm and precise communication contrasted sharply with the officer's growing discomfort and frustration. She tried once more to reason with the officers, asking politely but firmly why they believed her passport was invalid. She offered to provide any additional documentation or verification needed. The officers, caught off guard by her composure and confidence, exchanged uneasy glances. They had not anticipated encountering someone so self-assured and knowledgeable in a situation they intended to control, with intimidation and authority. The crowd's interest intensified. People continued recording discreetly, some speaking softly about what they were witnessing. The woman remained focused, using the presence of bystanders as a subtle form of protection, ensuring that any actions taken against her would be observed and potentially accountable. She stayed calm, deliberate, and articulate, demonstrating control over her own reactions and the situation at large. Eventually, the officers paused, clearly unsure of how to proceed. The woman seized the moment to assert her position further, reiterating that her passport was valid, that she had followed all legal requirements, and that destroying her documents would be a serious violation. She requested that a supervisor be called immediately, emphasizing that proper procedure should be followed. Her words carried authority and clarity, leaving little room for the officers to continue their misconduct without consequence. The tension on the sidewalk began to shift. The officer's initial confidence was replaced by uncertainty and apprehension. The woman remained calm and composed, fully aware that her assertiveness and knowledge were now the most powerful tools she had in ensuring her rights were respected. Passengers continued to observe in silence, some whispering about her courage, some reflecting on how she had handled a highly stressful and potentially intimidating situation without panic or aggression. As the situation developed, it became increasingly clear that the officers had underestimated her. They had expected fear or submission, but instead they faced composure, clarity, and assertiveness. The woman's calm demeanor not only protected her, but also highlighted the officer's error in judgment. She remained articulate, professional, and steady, ensuring that any further actions would be carefully scrutinized by both the officers themselves and the witnesses around her. With her request for a supervisor pending, the woman continued to maintain control of the interaction through her calm authority and clear communication. She ensured that her posture, her gestures, and her words all conveyed professionalism and confidence. The airport, bustling as always, seemed to focus on this single, unfolding moment of tension and authority. Bystanders quietly recognized the unusual dynamic, understanding that the woman's actions had shifted the situation and prevented immediate escalation. Time seemed to stretch as the officers considered their next steps. The woman remained steady, refusing to show anger or panic. She knew that maintaining composure was critical in protecting herself and ensuring that the situation would be resolved fairly. Her calm presence and assertive communication became the defining features of the encounter, demonstrating her intelligence, poise, and unwavering commitment to her rights. Eventually, the first supervisor arrived, and the woman's clear and calm explanation of the situation continued to dominate the interaction. The officers who had initially scrutinized her looked increasingly uncomfortable, their authority undermined by her composure and the presence of both bystanders and higher-ranking staff. The woman's ability to navigate this stressful situation with clarity and professionalism had effectively turned a potentially chaotic encounter into one of control and dignity. The time the supervisor intervened, it was evident to everyone around that the woman had handled the situation with extraordinary calm and intelligence. Her knowledge, composure, and assertiveness had prevented further escalation and had clearly demonstrated the officer's error in judgment. The crowd began to recognize the significance of her presence, understanding that she had turned what could have been a humiliating or dangerous situation into a display of professional authority and courage. The story of this moment at the airport would continue to unfold, but for now the woman stood firm, confident, and composed. She had navigated the first stage of an extremely tense encounter with clarity and professionalism,